The horrifying backstory of the Chompettes was revealed on who they were and what tragedy they had to face. As I explained in the main ending called Origins Ending in the previous video, I won't cover it here. Instead, I will focus on the two other endings. You can watch the last video by hitting on the card above to catch up on what happened, as I won't go over the story from the beginning either. Hi folks, I'm R, and welcome to Cooking Companions DLC, All Other Endings Explained. Keep in mind that this video will have spoilers, and with that said, let's begin. Waking up from a nightmare, Potato, the greasy-haired man who seems to fit the description of being the butcher of Zakopane, comes to the protagonist, informing her that she should shake off her fear of being hunted by ghosts and prevent anyone from becoming stronger than her. Potato, having killer instincts and enjoying pain and misery inflicted on others, incites the protagonist to fight against the spirits and stop the nightmares from tormenting her. If she agrees, she enters the nightmare mode where she faces her victims, but if she refuses, Potato calls her pathetic and decides to leave when Cabbage takes over. Cabbage, on the other hand, informs the protagonist to embrace her nightmare so that maybe she can come to peace with her wrongdoings and maybe feel guilty enough to stop killing and eating people. Either way, she enters the nightmare mode, there to face the ghost of her past. Waking up in the room, the protagonist observes a faint residue of Maria being enraged, encouraging the protagonist to follow her. Going to the living room, she doesn't see anything but beautiful sunshine. Going to the kitchen, she notices it being covered in bloodstain with faint whispers when the protagonist starts feeling hungry, taking a bite from her reserve of meat, losing more of her humanity. This portrays that the protagonist was once a human who seemingly lost it after consuming human flesh. Therefore, the protagonist, despite sharing extreme resemblance and behavior to Baba Yaga, she was in fact once a human being who lost it after chasing evil and misfortune, consuming human flesh and killing people. That was the case with Gregor, Anatoly, and Karen, who all started becoming similar to the protagonist, becoming demonic and slowly losing their own humanity, craving for more human flesh. Karen, the last person standing who consumed the most amount of flesh, almost went toe-to-toe with the protagonist, displaying how she developed supernatural abilities. Therefore, whether it is the cabin or the woods, it seems to transform humans into monsters after they consume human flesh. And as the potato said, she shouldn't let the ghosts or other visitors become stronger than her. Therefore, her abilities are a product of consuming flesh. This points out to another folklore monster than Baba Yaga, which I will discuss in a subsequent video. Heading to bed, observing how the cabin has been smeared with blood, probably one of the spirits tormenting her, the protagonist sleeps tight in hopes of having wonderful and colorful dreams, when unsurprisingly, she's tormented by more nightmares. Hearing Karen's voice, urging her to wake up, the protagonist goes to the kitchen, hearing Karen whittling her wooden knife. She's disappointed to find no one there, realizing that it's her ghost hunting her. Subsequently, being hunted by Anatoly this time, who explains how he cannot get the taste out of his mouth. Referring to the flesh of Maria, the protagonist reawakens to Karen being by her side, having no pupils in her eyeballs, having an awfully menacing face. Following her to the living room, the protagonist is faced with all of her recent victims, Anatoly, Gregor, Karen, and Maria. They inform the protagonist by performing a ritual together. The mistakes and wrongdoings the protagonist made could be reversed, turning back time and saving Maria, so none of them would be consumed. As the protagonist agrees to perform the ritual, time goes back to when they entered, when the story deviates slightly. This time, Anatoly, Gregor, and Karen all dying one after another, with Maria being the only one left with the protagonist seemingly taking the place of Karen. Unlike Karen, consuming the meat doesn't transform Maria into the monster Karen had, but similarly to Karen, she seems to fall in love with the protagonist, promising her to share a wonderful life with her. She acts compassionately towards her, letting her stay on a rocking chair, as her arthritis hurts her due to her old age. This of course depicts that the protagonist has been alive for many decades, having a reign of terror, killing and consuming humans for a long time. Asking Maria a question she asked the companions when they entered, whether they were sent or came by their own free will. Maria knows what to say, saying that she came 75% by her own free will and 65% by compulsion. When the protagonist lets her stay, which has led many to believe the protagonist is Baba Yaga, as in the folklore, that is precisely what Baba Yaga asks, and that is exactly the answer she requires for letting one live. But of course, there are more legends and tales involved in the story, which seems to mix another demonic being, which I will make a separate video for. As the protagonist closes her eyes, smiling that she's finally found her soulmate, someone whom she can be with, so she won't have to be alone and isolated ever again, she feels a sharp pain in her body, noticing that Maria has stabbed her. Maria explains that this was all a charade, with her finally being dead, so her reign of terror ends and no more innocent life is wasted on her. Soon, she loses her life with blood pouring out when Maria gives her companions a proper burial, never forgetting them, going to Zakopane to inform others about the horrible experience she had in the cabin. Maria, being a strong person, goes on to work with the Polish government, eventually returning home to Ukraine. In 1945, she's selected to attend a conference in San Francisco, subsequently being selected to represent Ukraine at the first meeting of the United Nations. As a successful person and important figure, she goes on to form a group investigating paranormal entities and beings using the cabin as a blueprint. She then goes on to realize many atypical beings that in fact have a hand in manipulating historical events, which she, with her organization, limits and investigates. She finally passes away after the age of 85, being surrounded by loved ones, never forgetting her companions in the horrible cabin, sharing their memories and how much she missed them. Due to her actions creating such organization, many hostile atypical beings are cut, making the world a better and safer place for everyone. Therefore, the ritual did in fact work, saving Maria, but in return killing the despicable monstrous being that is in the cabin, putting an end to her miserable life and saving many who would fall victim to her, and that is all thanks to Maria. Alternatively, deciding not to perform the ritual to go back in time, it feels as if she passes a test, not really knowing anymore what the right or wrong decision is, completely acting based on her instincts. The ghosts of her victims become furious but soon leave, just to torment her more around the cabin. The protagonist suddenly falls asleep, waking up in her bathroom once more, not knowing how she ended up there. This repeats the loop of the protagonist being stuck in the cabin, becoming older and older just to get another meal and killing other innocent people. In a way, this raises the question, is the protagonist really free and not in her own hell, doomed to repeat the same nightmare over and over again, just for survival? In a strange nightmare, a woman called Anita comes to the protagonist's cabin, informing her that she's under arrest for murder, to which the protagonist is puzzled to what year this might be, as if this happened many years ago, where the protagonist was wanted by authorities. This in a way is hinted towards finding a court summons, asking someone to attend court for certain disturbances. Therefore, this could point out that the protagonist was wanted, but she killed whoever was after her, being hunted by those nightmares. What's very interesting here, however, is the fact that Anita refers to the protagonist as ma'am, which reveals that the protagonist is an elderly woman. In an alternate ending, in the beginning of the game, the protagonist agrees to face his nightmares and fight them, with Potato taking over, instructing her to become stronger and face her nightmares. Going through the horrendous past memories yet again, the protagonist finally lets go of the Chompettes, only having the psychopathic Potato on her side. A horrible influence which will make her become a more horrifying monster than ever before. With Potato's guidance, the protagonist armed with a knife finally leaves her nest, the cabin, roaming every town and village, bringing terror and death to every family, group and companion she encounters, becoming truly an unstoppable monster. Finally going back to the cabin, not having the sound of the Chompettes always there keeping her company, she grips her knife tightly, knowing that she will eat well soon, going out to hunt and bringing misery to others. One thing that is brought up again is Potato discussing a person with the protagonist who has aged many years now, who knows the secret, someone who seems to be the one who wrote the letters about wanting to learn something from the protagonist. The Potato urges the protagonist to tell him the secret, wanting to meet this mysterious person. My personal theory is that the secret might be the way of obtaining the supernatural abilities the protagonist has by consuming meat and seemingly getting longevity and strength. The mystery on how the people were always brought back home after drowning is in a way pointed out to as well. There seems to be a large fence down the hill from the cabin which had many bones lying next to it. This seems to prevent the drowned bodies of victims to drift through, making the protagonist fetch them and consume them. That is how everyone died trying to swim through the floodwater, as the fence seemingly prevented them from swimming further. The bones at the fence could also refer to a story from Baba Yaga, who uses the bones from her victims to decorate her territories. I still have some theories about the main character and the plot, which I might make subsequent videos for. Make sure to stay tuned not to miss out on them by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. If you also have any theories of your own, make sure to DM me or tag me on my Twitter. It's been your host Star, and as always, have a fantastic day.